Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here, and I'm talking with Rick. Rick, actually, it's interesting. I think on LinkedIn, I think I wrote out to you maybe, but Rick is in Dallas here with me, and so we actually met up on the side here, and so I've met at least one other person that uses AutoHotkey in person. I've worked with a couple others, but it's very rare. I've met two other people here in Dallas that use AutoHotkey. But Rick, why don't you give a little background on yourself, your education, if you've been a programmer, and whatnot.
Sure. Hey, Joe, and hey, world. Thanks for having me on here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak a little bit today. And a little background on me is I went to Brigham Young University, and I always knew I wanted to learn more about computers. So I majored in computer science, got my bachelor's from there. I graduated from there in 2008. And straight away, the best offer I got was to come to Texas Instruments and work as a software engineer. And so that's how I got from Utah to Texas, and I haven't left there since. So that's the background.
Cool. And do you program in other languages?
So the bulk of my experience has been in like object-oriented stuff with C++, Java. I've also done stuff in C. Most of my professional experience is in that. But when I do stuff that I enjoy, I usually do it in a scripting language like Perl or Python, and at times that includes rolling in AutoHotkey.
Cool. Yeah, I've incorporated Python with AutoHotkey and vice versa, but I don't touch the biggies like C, and those are way over my head.
Me too.
Yeah, it's yeah, and God bless people that can do it. Yeah, I've just never tried that hard to learn. I don't like to quote unquote program, right? So I love the benefits I get from doing it, but the actual coding itself, even in AutoHotkey, I don't really like to code. It's not something I like solving problems, but anyway, yeah. How about do you want to talk a little bit about how you got started? Actually, how did you find AutoHotkey?
So I'm not sure if I found AutoHotkey or AutoHotkey found me. This takes us back to Texas Instruments. So I'd never really heard of AutoHotkey in formal education. It's not something you would have a class on or anything like that. But it's good for solving problems. And I had a problem that I needed to solve when I was at Texas Instruments. And the problem was that I needed a way to automate this GUI. It was commercially licensed, and it had this really cool chart in it that I wanted to present and roll into an automated testing framework that I was developing. And I wanted to grab this graphical chart out of this GUI and display it as part of a detailed analysis if there was an error, so that whoever the tester was could look at this and get a lot of helpful information. And I was struggling with all these different ways to do it. I researched the command line options of the tool and the APIs and talked to the support, and there's no way to do it just using the native functionality of the tool. And so I thought, okay, well, then I need something that's going to interact with this tool programmatically without a human in the loop. And a coworker of mine actually said, hey, why don't you try this? And it was I think it was called Autoit. Oh yeah. Which is kind of similar to the same fundamentals that AutoHotkey is built on. And Autoit worked well for this. And then somehow researching Autoit, I came across AutoHotkey. And it just kind of started a whole new world opened up to me where I was like, wow, I can do lots of really cool things that I thought I really couldn't do very easily before, because reading the Windows documentation for some of their system calls is painful.
Yeah, I'm glad
And
to hear that it's not just me. Like, sometimes just MSDN for me is at times so painful. Trying to understand how to use it. Anyway, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's not always intuitive, and often it's really kind of weird.
I mean, to me, I feel often like it's written on people at such a level so far above me that and whoever did it, they can't talk. Like, some people like to understand economics, right? They can talk and all this formulaic stuff, yet but they can't dumb it down to like a 10-year-old, which still usually, people who are really brilliant can do that. And I find a lot of documentation, that's how I feel, at least when I'm reading it. Maybe it's not accurate, but is that someone who is very knowledgeable wrote this, but not for someone like me.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of kind of weird Microsoftisms in there
Sure. Yeah.
that like I can read the Linux documentation usually, and
Oh,
it kind of
interesting.
makes sense. But the Microsoft stuff is usually there's some weird nuances that if you're not familiar with the I guess conventions, then
Yes.
it's and culture, then it's kind of difficult to just step right into.
Yeah, actually, that's part of it. Is actually one of the what I wanted to get someone who really knows MSDN well to explain some of those things, because I remember reading somewhere like, hey, if it's in brackets, it's optional. If it's this, it means this, and I'm like, I don't go there enough to memorize these things. Yet that's not listed like on their in easy way to find it, obvious site. So I would love for someone to walk through and help explain when it's in this kind of italic or whatever, right? The what
Oh
that is.
yeah, like the vertical bar means or and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
right. Yeah, just the little stuff. You're like, man, it does seem anyway. Yeah, it's one topic I'd like to cover at some point with someone who actually understands it, so I can record it, because I can't memorize all those things. I need to be able to go back later and find the document or find a video and rewatch it so I can interpret it again.
Yeah, I hear you there. That person is I could speak to some of that, but not the Microsoft specific stuff.
Yeah. And actually, so I've spoken to a couple people who've played with Autoit. It sounds like you've done a little bit more than necessarily played with it. How do you think the two stack up, as far as one is the programming in them, and then the second is the actual functionality of able to do stuff? Do they? My understanding is they're pretty even as far as the capabilities of the what they can do. They're pretty similar.
The last time I used both of them kind of side by side was a while ago. It was
Yeah.
like 2008. So, but
Okay.
I made a few notes on it, and let me look up what my main takeaway was, because I think that would be a good piece of information as to why I ended reminding myself
Yeah.
why I switched
Yeah.
to AutoHotkey, because I wasn't introduced to that, and usually it takes something where a reason for me to switch after I already have something up.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. No worries.
So, okay, I found it.
Obviously, you're highly
And
organized.
yeah, I try to be. So for what my analysis, and I didn't say why, but they are more alike than they are different.
Mm-hmm.
And AutoHotkey, I believe, is actually a fork at some point
Yes.
from Autoit.
Yes.
And so my opinion, based on what I did, this was a note I made in 2014. I found that for me, Autoit, I would probably use that for something that's larger and more complex.
Uh-huh.
But for something like quick and dirty or a one-off like script or
Yeah.
something I want to do in maybe 100 lines,
Yeah.
I would use AutoHotkey. But if I'm starting to call other, like if I'm starting to have some kind of something where I need structure and flows, I would probably start switching to Autoit.
Cool. That's a good. Thank you for pulling that up.
My pleasure.
And then I think you said you had planned out some talking points or something?
Yeah, yeah. Let me glance down here at my sheet. And so we covered how I got started. We covered so how I've used AutoHotkey.
Yeah.
The when I made this note in 2014, there was something significant that happened in my life, which was that I had to move from Texas Instruments to a new job against my will.
Mm.
What happened was Texas Instruments kind of closed their doors on their wireless business unit.
Oh yeah.
You may have remembered that.
I was there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was there too, and I was in the wireless business unit.
Yeah.
And so this affected me. So about, I don't know, 3,000 employees or so were just kind of given a month notice that their job was ending. And this was November, and I had 3 kids. Christmas was coming up, and I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
I was living month to month, and I was kind of, I had a feeling like things would work out, but at the same time, I didn't know how. And so I was just trying to find a way to find some money while I was applying at different jobs. And a friend of mine at my church came up to me, and he was like, hey, you know, Pizza Hut is hiring people to like go onto websites and compare prices of different pizzas, and is that something, you know, you'd be interested in, just to make a few dollars while things are settling out? And I was like, hey, you know, nothing better has come along. I can do it from home and answer calls and set up interviews. So it made sense.
First off, let me stop there and say kudos to you, because a lot of people would have passed on that, right? And some people, like, I don't touch stuff that's like quote unquote below me or whatever. And I'm the same way. Like, I don't care what it is, man. If I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get some money, you know, I'd be out digging ditches if that's what I had to do in the short term, right? To before I solve the long one. So anyway, kudos to you.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'm the same kind of mentality. Just roll up your sleeves and find a way to get it done. And that was what was needed at the time. So this particular project, it was a contracting thing. It lasted about 2 weeks, and you looked at so each franchised location of this pizza chain would have its own website. So like the location on here where I live at, the nearest one, would have its own website with its own prices. And so I would go there and I would write down what the prices were for that location. And then I would go to the next location and write down all the prices and so on. And then Pizza Hut would collect this information. They would look at the nearest like Papa John's and be like, oh, well, are we beating them enough? And so they were using this to competitively price and try to gain an advantage over the other, you know, whoever's delivering Domino's and Papa John's and guys like that. And so I got a list of like literally like 1,000 different stores. And there was a set, you know, it was a set price. I deliver this, and I did like 20 of them, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And for each price, you got to go into a different part of the menu.
Oh yeah.
And there's like desserts,
all different
drinks, and sometimes you got to go to different places to combine to get a special. And it was a mess, and it was just mind numbing. And I was like, okay, I've got some skills from Texas Instruments. I've used Autoit before. Okay, how can I do this a better way? How can I do this and go to sleep and wake up and have it?
And stay sane. Yeah.
Yeah, and I took a risk. I spent about a week on this, and I had 2 weeks to finish. And after about a week, I had something that worked pretty well. And it was just cobbling together a couple of different, I was looking at the HTML, some of the things to key off of in the HTML code that was unique, and figuring out ways to drive, because, okay, let me back up. when you would go to different locations, the website would have a tendency to monitor you and boot you off every so like timeout, right?
Yeah.
Like every maybe hour after you've gone to 5 locations,
Okay.
it's like, what are you trying to do? I don't
Right.
trust you, you
Wow.
spider.
Yeah.
And so I had to build in some robustness into everything I was doing, but I got an end-to-end solution that worked. And the high level, without going into the gory details, I used Perl to be the overall engine.
Mm-hmm.
In Perl, I had about 6 different AutoHotkey scripts, I would call. The first one was searching for a location,
Mm-hmm.
because that was a key part of this, was to go to 1,000 different locations. So
Right.
I needed a script to help me do that from that page. And so I just had an AutoHotkey script that would know the zip code I was trying to get to. And I forget some of the logic I put in there, but it did some fancy stuff to figure out which one out of multiple hits to pick. I think it also did like, it would hit Control F and type in the street name. And then it would set focus to that street name. And then if I push tab, it would go to where I was focused on the actual, go to store type of link on the page. So I used AutoHotkey to drive the Control F, input the text that I wanted to search for, activate that search, and then press tab, and then press spacebar or whatever to activate the control that I was on after doing that sequence. Okay, then at that point I'm on a menu page, and so I have an AutoHotkey script to drive me to desserts, and then so what I did, there's a couple of different ways to do this. I did like a print. I did like a print HTML or whatever option on that page. You know how you can view the source?
Sure.
So I would do that, and then I would like just do a Control A and a Control C, copy that. So now I've got the text that I need to parse for that. It's got prices and the items. So once I have the raw data, it's easy to parse it.
Sure.
But getting it, I used AutoHotkey to get it. So that netted me about $3,500 in a week.
Nice.
And they were so pleased with the accuracy of my manual extraction efforts that A, they gave me more stores to do right then, and B, they called me back for round 2.
Nice.
And round 2 was great because I was like, hey, I've already got most of this working.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like, give me all your stores, but they wouldn't do it. But I got more stores. So.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I that feeling though that you mentioned earlier about that risk, right? Kudos for you also for being brave enough to, and it has to do with confidence, right? You had enough confidence that you'd figure it out, right? You would, whatever you do, your time would be worth it. So yeah, that's it. But it is kind of, you feel kind of risky at the time of like, is this going to pay out?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was in the position where it's like, I mean, you get to that point where eventually doing it manually is painful enough.
Oh yeah, exactly.
You're like, if it's repeatable and it's not something you enjoy, then you should be using something to help.
It's kind of funny you said that, because it reminds me, in some of the conversations I've been having with the people, we're talking about how the repetition and the pattern, you got to spot it, but part of the drive is that painfulness, right? You need to realize like this sucks. And it reminds me, years ago I watched this debate on what was it, public transportation, and they went to, I forget what country, but this country who had this terrible congestion, and basically the guy said, here's the irony, is like, you can't afford public transportation in a place that doesn't have enough people because there's not enough people riding it, but of course the public transportation is supposed to relieve the crowdedness, But the only way it can succeed is if there's enough crowdedness in the first place to get people to write it where it's painful. It was really interesting of like, it's either you're going to have it and then you got to do it, or it's not going to, you're not going to have the public transportation because it's not an issue in the first place. Right. So
Yep.
Anyway, like I hadn't thought of it that way, is like the more painful something is, that's when you start realizing like, I got to find a way to do this, to another way.
Yeah, maybe threshold of pain, I guess. And when you meet it, what it's different for each user and depends on the circumstances. But if you're not enjoying something and it's something that you're doing frequently, then you might want to consider, hey, how could I automate this? And I think most people's brains work that way, but sometimes we get so trapped into headlines, or we're not aware of some of the tools that are out there, that the solution may pass us by.
Yeah. So I don't know if I remember if I interrupted you. Were you done with your story there, or did you then take more action? I mean, did you start working for that company doing more?
No, I didn't do this. Was just a one-off contract thing, and yeah, they did invite me back for the next contract opportunity, but and then I reached out to them a year or two later, but they're not doing that project anymore. So that's just some stale code I still have sitting around on my computer. But I learned a lot from it, and it got me through a tough time, and so it wasn't for nothing by any means.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's another critical lesson that I keep hearing this is also is to reinforce is, don't be, the time you invest in this, it's an investment, right? You get to, it's not a one-time thing, you did it and it's gone, because I can't tell you how many things I've, borrowed from things that I thought was a one-off thing, and yet I still repurpose it and reuse it and use that knowledge later in different ways.
Yes, yeah, a lot of the problems are kind of generic, and you can often borrow some of those sub-steps in later solutions that are being developed. I've found that to be true as well. I don't know how much time we have, but I do have one other way that I've used AutoHotkey that's I think is cool.
Yeah.
And so a little background on this one is, now I do contract testing for U-Test, which is kind of like micro contract. Like a customer will come along and they're like, hey, we want someone to help us test this for a week. And so U-Test has like a pool of testers, and if you can participate, then you kind of raise your hand. And a common way that U-Test likes someone to submit like an issue that we find is to do like a screen recording of maybe their website or exactly how the problem can be reproduced. And I found myself doing this so much that I reached that threshold of pain where I'm like, I want a way where I can push a button and start recording my desktop screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked into this a long time, and I could not find an easy way to do it in a way that I liked.
Yeah.
So I found a way to build my own.
Cool.
And you can do this if you install if you use ffmpeg, which have you heard of that?
I use it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool command line
program. Yeah.
Media type tool where you can transcode, decode, and do all these different manipulations with audio and video files.
For free.
For free. Open source.
Yeah.
So you can.
Though, right?
What's that?
It's command line driven, just so people understand. It's not a GUI interface.
Yeah, there are a lot of front ends to ffmpeg.
Okay, I haven't seen them.
But I don't use them because they're often bundled with malware, and I'm so familiar with the interface anyways. But
yeah.
So the pieces that you got to have to make this work are: one, ffmpeg. Number two, you got to install what's called a video filter on your system. I think the one I use is, I can't remember the name of it right now. But I can send this to you, Joe, after we're done.
That'd be excellent because I know people are going to
kind of a
ask.
high-level instructions in case anyone wants to reproduce this.
Yeah.
So you need
I want
a
to
video
reproduce it.
filter.
I haven't even seen it yet. So yeah, I'm all
Yeah,
over.
it's not too bad once you know it, but it took
Yeah.
me a long time to figure it out. So you need those two, and then basically I create like a script that calls ffmpeg, passes it this video filter, and then you pass it some options to record your desktop, and you can set like the dimensions,
Mhm.
and so you could customize whether you want to do full screen or capture a specific window or something like that.
Nice.
So I have a Perl script that kind of builds up this command to ffmpeg, and I can do some cool things with it. I can one of the biggest problems I had though in developing this was figuring out how to stop it from recording easily without going to the command line and pressing Control-C.
Yeah.
I found a bunch of ways to kill it, but if you kill it and it's not the right signal, then your stream capture is erased.
Bummer.
Because it won't terminate gracefully. And so that's a problem I was having for a long time, and eventually I figured out how to solve that, and I'll send you both pieces, how to build it up and how to tear it down.
Nice.
So it's great.
I'm curious, does it record your audio as well?
It very easily could. Yeah. For mine, I don't, because for you tests, you usually don't need that. Sure. But you very easily could add that in because that's just changing the ffmpeg command.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to install anything special to get audio because ffmpeg will automatically recognize your built-in audio stuff.
Cool.
I believe the ffmpeg terminology for that is an audio device and a video device. And if you go into ffmpeg and type like ffmpeg-I, I think, or some help switch and devices, it'll actually list all the devices that it finds. And then that already tells you which string you're going to need to pass to it.
Cool. Yeah.
So that's one way you can check to see if your video filter is installed correct.
Recently, I had found some MP3 files it's a direct marketing like webinar, and the audio files were so low in volume, and I was like, how do I find a program that will increase the volume, the audio? And sure enough, ffmpeg, I found a command that would process it and boost the volume, and then actually apply a couple filters to drop out some of the hissing and stuff. And it was great. I'm like, this is it. With the name MPEG, you'd think it's only video, but it wasn't. It did the audio on its own as well.
Yeah, I cannot recommend ffmpeg highly enough. And there's also another one for audio as well.
Audacity is another good one that I've used.
Yeah, it's good. It's a command line one.
Okay.
What's the name of it?
And OBS I use for automated for having a GUI to record like your desktop, but with an interface. It's free.
Yeah, that's okay. You use that to record your desktop. That's a GUI, right?
It does have a GUI, yeah.
But you could interact with it from the command line?
No, I'm just saying, I was just letting people know that's another one. I haven't tried to connect with it via the command line. It wouldn't surprise me. I know I can send it hotkeys to do stuff, but I haven't tried. I'm sure I can launch it from the command line. I just haven't checked out the parameters of it. I'm just saying it's a free open source tool that can record video that does have a GUI and is highly customizable as well.
Okay. So I've found the one thing I like about mine that's really cool is that sometimes I'll ask for help at work. I'll be like, hey, can you help me sort this out and make sense to me? And a lot of times those conversations end up going over my head the first time.
Yeah, sure.
And so I've found that I can just press this key and start recording my desktop, and they're like bringing up all these files, and showing stuff,
Oh, absolutely.
and they don't even
Yeah,
know that I'm
right.
recording it. So I can kind of save my face kind of replay it later on and be
Yeah,
like, oh, okay, that's what it's saying. Because I don't
yeah,
always observe it all in the first pass.
yeah.
And that way people can be a little bit more patient
Oh,
with me.
at TI, we had people in regions, like in China and Japan and stuff, and we'd have these calls, and we'd have like a WebEx, and we'd teach all the stuff, and no one would ever ask questions, and then and then finally, I started just recording everything, and then giving them the recordings, and they absolutely loved that because exactly that purpose. They could go back and rewatch and over, and because their English was good, but it wasn't that good, right? And when you're trying to understand
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the words as well as what they mean, it's a lot more work. So anyway, that's an amen on that one. It's so easy even for yourself, right? To just say, you know what, I'm just going to record this, and I can go back. I do it all the time when people teach me. Maestrius will teach me a ton of stuff. He's the author of AutoHotkey Studio. He teaches me amazing stuff in AutoHotkey, and I record every second of it. And I don't go back and watch all of it, right? But boy, at times it's amazingly helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. The great thing about it is that I don't have to be like, hey, can you stop while
Right,
I turn on my screen, while I turn
right.
this application on to record you?
Yeah,
I just press a button. They don't even know that they're
yeah.
being recorded. So,
Hey, I'm curious because this is the one OBS drives me nuts on. Because in OBS you can't pause the recording. Um, can you use yours where you could pause it, or is it just going to stop it and create a new file if you start it again?
it creates a new file, and that works okay for what I'm doing right now. But
Sure.
I'm almost at the pain point where I'm starting to try to figure out how to do that. But it's tough to do from the command line.
Yeah.
But there's probably a way to do it, but
Mhm.
it would have to be not using ffmpeg, I don't
Well,
think.
or you wrap the entire thing somehow to where when it's done, it looks in a certain folder and automatically merges based on the number or the timestamp, right? The files that are there.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be easy to do, and that's
yeah,
probably what these other applications are doing in the background
probably
too.
is. Right. Right.
But yeah, merging is you could easily accomplish with
Hmm.
ffmpeg. um, it would be cool if you actually could pause it though, because that would
Oh, I know. That's the one thing I used Camtasia for years, and it's the only thing I miss from Camtasia with using OBS is I can't pause it and take a break, do anything. Then I have to go merge two files, which is the other one. The other day I actually had to merge two videos, and I'm like, I'll just do it in YouTube. Well, YouTube got rid of their editor, so I would search around. Sure enough, ffmpeg merged the two files together for me, stitched them up.
so here's another good one for command line audio manipulation tools. It's
Mm-hmm.
called SOX, and it's really cool. So
SOCKS or X?
S like the White Sox,
Okay.
SOX.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and it's pretty good too, and it can do some things that ffmpeg can't even do.
Huh. I also use LiceCap, which is it'll very quickly and easily create an animated GIF. So if you have a file that you want to give to someone else, but you don't care about the audio, it'll record an animated GIF like a movie, but the file size is super tiny, and it's open source as well, and it has a GUI. It does not command. I don't think it's command line. I don't think it has that option. But it's another free one I'll use to quickly capture something to demonstrate to someone when I'm trying to explain to them. I'm like, hey, you know what, I'll do it. I'll do an animated GIF and move my mouse and show them where I'm clicking, and it's a quarter of a meg instead of 5 megs or bigger when you do a video, and so it's super easy to use and it's free.
Do you know what the size limitations are on a GIF?
No, I've made some big ones though. I've used that program to it had, for me, it was, I didn't run into a size limitation as far as the file. It was sharing it on places that accepted images like pictures. That's where they'd have like a 10 meg limit or something.
Okay. Well, do you want me to speak to some of the final questions that we mentioned at the beginning?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like, well, actually, I'm curious. So, at your current work, does anybody else use AutoHotkey?
It's not common. So I work right now. I don't think I said where I work at right now. I work at Raytheon,
Oh, that's right.
and
I forgot. Yeah.
it's kind of discouraged to use tools that haven't been vetted.
Right.
Although if it's open source, I don't worry about it too much. But it's like if something goes wrong with it, you could get in trouble. So most
Yeah.
people don't take on that risk.
I go by the principles of asking for forgiveness instead of permission. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I just like to get stuff done.
Yeah. Exactly.
I did see one use of AutoHotkey though here, which was really kind of interesting because it was like one of the biggest like security bypasses that you can imagine.
Yeah.
And it is someone wrote an AutoHotkey script to bypass the Windows admin prompt.
Oh my.
But I couldn't get it to work on mine. But I was like, wow, that surprises me. That's in the official guides for new users.
Yeah. You'll get a kick out of this. Tell me if you remember how fun the passwords were at TI, that like you had to have like this crazy, uppercase, lowercase letter, and they provided a list of like 20 at a time, like passwords, right? When you had to choose a new password every 90 days, it'd have an uppercase and lowercase letter, a number, and a special character. But you couldn't just write it, right? That you had to pick from a list. Well, it drove me nuts because like I wanted to pick something that was easy to remember. And so I automated taking the list of what was shown, grabbing them, and then saying, show me only those that have one number and that have one uppercase letter. And I think I had some other rule, I forget what it was, but it took that list of 20 down to usually like one, maybe one or two, and I could hit next and it would automate getting the next ones. And so I could click through really quickly without having to read all of them, right? And it filtered it to where I was like really quickly pick a new password. I'm like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's not quite circumventing their thing because I'm still using their password, but it was just like that was so painful to find that you'd sit there for 20 minutes of just clicking next and reading all these stupid things to find one that's not so painful.
Yeah, I would do that manually. I remember that, and it was painful. And I was like, yes, I got one. I only have to push the shifty once.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's almost a word in it kind of thing, where it's like, or at least something that I can turn into what are those called? The mnemonic type things.
Mnemonic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one I was like, I can sell this to other TI people, like no problem, right? Because come over to my computer and I just say, do you need to pick a new password? Come to my computer, and then you can log in as yourself and just run it instead of me giving them the program because it was just easier. But yeah,
it would cost like a donut or something.
Right? Yeah, yeah. I made a lot of friends, but I never charged people. But boy, they were so grateful. Like, yeah, it's. Yeah, I've never heard of one circumventing the admin thing. That's interesting.
Something I did at TI that is kind of fun. Do you remember when they had like those tokens that you could use for the
yes,
for the free publications from O'Reilly and stuff like that?
Oh yes. I actually I had a subscription to that. Yeah. Where I could
like Tech Hub or something like that.
Yeah, well, they changed it at some point, but at some point, like if you didn't use it enough, you lost access, and then you had to request access again and whatever. But yeah, it was cool. They actually had allowed you to peek into those.
But yeah, I like that. And at one point, I figured out a way to automate. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I figured out a way to automate. Getting a table of contents for one of those titles. And with your tokens, you could download a PDF. I had 10, so I could download 10 chapters.
Oh, okay.
And that was it. But you could print, you could do a hard copy of them. Well, I was like, well, who wants a hard copy?
Yeah.
I want to be able to search it,
Yeah.
for keywords and stuff and have it as a reference without having to carry it around.
Right.
So I just printed it to a PDF, right? But
Sure.
you have to do that for like every 3 pages or something.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, AutoHotkey to the rescue.
Yeah.
So I just printed out all these PDFs and got a bunch of these manuals for free. So maybe not necessarily recommended, but hey,
Yeah.
it worked. And
I,
so I got a couple of cool publications I was interested in.
one I recently did. It's a little kind of crossing the line, possibly, but in a webinar we did a little while ago, Jackie demonstrated, my partner that does webinars. He demonstrated using OCR with AutoHotkey, and so I have a screen clipping tool where I can quickly grab a screen image, and have it. Well, in the webinar, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna take your OCR stuff and connect that to my screen clipping tool. So when I have like an image of something, I can do OCR on it like that and get the text. And so recently I've been reading a ton of books from this author, and some of the stuff I really like, but I want to share a little bit, like an excerpt with someone to say, here's a passage I think you'll like, you should read this book, but I don't give them the whole book, but I'll go to like Google Books and look up the passage I've read, and I can just, scan it with my clipping thing. It'll grab an image and I can hit another hotkey and it OCRs it. And usually the text is spot on. And so I can very quickly extract the text, not the image, which I just don't want to email an image. It's nice having the text. But
Yeah,
that was one. Yeah, I'm not doing the whole book, so I don't feel too bad. I'm trying to get really people to buy the book. So I'm like, all right, I don't think it'd be too frowned upon, but it's just really cool that like it's a click of a button, and I don't have to worry about anything.
There was another time when my wife had a small home business, and she had this Facebook group that she would create for like a pop-up sale. And so it's like this group, and it's only built up for this one event, and then she wants to tear it down because the sale doesn't exist anymore and the traffic on it isn't valid. That like the communication between the people back and forth has no more really context or value.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's also confusing to have these, which one is active and which one isn't. So she wanted a way to tear it down, but Facebook doesn't have a way you have to delete each individual member from the group before you can delete the group.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, this is the problem I'm up against. She knew my background, so she's like, can you help me? I'm like, give me an hour to think about it. And in about an hour, I came up with a pretty clunky way to do it. And I was like, why in the world does Facebook do this? So once again, that was another spot where I found AutoHotkey to be very useful. You click on a user, delete. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes, right. I'm sure.
Yeah.
No one wants to do that like 500 times. And then it spins while it refreshes the group. And
right.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I was grateful to solve that for her. It was one of the few times where she thought I did something cool.
Yeah, that's funny. At TI, when we were sending emails, we sent over 1 million emails a month, which were usually like, let's say 100 email campaigns. And, but month after month, we'd have all these lists that we had generated as in our tool, which I interacted with from a web browser. We'd have thousands of these lists that just every time you load the page, it would load them all, and it would just take forever to load. And so no one wanted to take the time, because you had to click each one to say you want to archive it. And I could do. There was no like select. There was a select all, but the problem was it had the newer ones too, which we didn't want to archive. We needed to have those handy in case we needed them. And so I'm like, well, I can, what if I go in and I click the first one, and then I hit the tab key, and I'm like, the tab key, move it, and then lands back on the thing, and I'd hit the space bar and it'd select it. And so I wrote like a 3-line loop that just said, at first I clicked the first one and then hit a hotkey, and it would iterate over selecting like 50 at a time and then I could just hit delete. And my team was so amazed. I'm like, oh, I'll clean up these for everyone, and because for them it's like hours of work, and I got it done in minutes, and it wasn't hard, right? It just cranked it out. But it's a simple example of how it takes a beating, right? Something like that where you're like, it's painful, like this. No, I don't want to do this. To think that, realize, because I had done this a lot, another that overall process I could have applied anywhere, but it never crossed my mind until it was really painful.
Yeah, I think you and I kind of share the same passion, which is I like things to be easy and I like to focus on real work. And my wish is that companies would invest in like a tooling guy to go and optimize some of the pain points of the developers, or some of the major business flows, and find ways to optimize those using tools like AutoHotkey or some scripting. And I just haven't seen that happen anywhere yet, but I often feel like there's a need for it. Because I know a lot of developers who they're all spending like over the course of a year, probably dozens of hours doing the same thing on their own machine
Absolutely.
because they like it. And I'm like, why? It would be great if we just had someone give this as, and they'd probably still go customize it or do their own. But a lot of them would use it and would benefit from it, or at least they would use it until they had time to develop something they felt worked better for them. But I think there's enough gains there that it could be justifiable from a business standpoint. And it saddens me that more organizations don't, it's just automatically kind of dismissed as not
Absolutely.
valuable.
Yeah. What I had that same experience, like at TI. I would see people, one group writing SQL queries all day, constantly connecting to the same tables, and yet they didn't have an easy way to pull up a template, right? And I'm like, and like just with hot strings alone in AutoHotkey, like you could easily have your SQL template, at your fingertips, right, and have it pop up.
Yep.
But that's just one group. Then other group in other IT things, and I would demonstrate stuff, and yet they still never adopted. And I was just amazed at, like, I would think programmers on average would be the first, like when they see it, go, wow, okay, I'm so going to borrow that. It's so much faster and easier. But yeah. Hey, by the way, have you seen quick access Popup or /QAP?
I looked at it. I remember you showing it to me when we met over lunch.
Wow, did I know about it then? I thought that I didn't think I'd realized had it at that time. Yeah, okay.
I always use something that's only free. Is it 100% free?
I mean, you can donate money if you choose to. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's perfectly free. He accepts money if you feel like you want to give him money, but it's open source.
I think I had something in place that already worked pretty well along the same lines, but I remember looking at it and saying, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the especially for the snippets, for me, the easy, I can add them to a GUI to have menus and submenus and store it and then click it and it will send my syntax. That's what I use it the most for, is to pull up my syntax that I've already saved and have it handy. I can't remember all my hot strings for everything, and so I'd put them in a GUI to trigger it.
Yeah.
And that was awesome.
Yeah, I use Ditto for myself, which is a clipboard manager, and and sometimes I'll store stuff in a menu in there, commands or certain types of strings. And then for my file explorer, I use Qt tab bar, and I really like that a lot because you can set up hotkeys for it, and it automatically knows what files are highlighted in there and for if nothing else, my favorite hotkey in there is you have a file highlighted and you just push shift. For me, I define shift 2, and I push that and it copies the full path of the file.
Yeah.
Or whatever's highlighted.
Well,
so if you have 5 files highlighted, it does all 5.
Yep.
If you have only 1, it does that 1. And so when you're programming things or scripting, it's really nice to be able to get paths of different stuff really easily. And so,
yeah, I wrote my own for Windows Explorer because I find that so helpful. So often I need the path to that file. I wrap mine in quotes. I guess I could figure it out. I've never gone back and done it, but because when I have multiple files selected, it doesn't individually wrap the things in quotes, which is what I should do. But it'll wrap the entire thing in double quotes, and you're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But I could easily fix it. But
yeah, you could easily fix that.
Yeah. But that tool QAP, just by the way, it actually interacts with like I think 5 or 6 different Explorer type windows, and I think Qt was one of those. Yeah. Anyway, I'd still say check it out if give it another try. He actually after we had a call a couple of weeks ago, the developer and I said, hey, what'd be really cool is if, because it's so often, you don't realize folders and files that you access frequently, that why don't you have QAP monitor and make suggestions on like, hey, I've seen you access this folder 3 times today. Like, you want to make a shortcut to it. So he's beginning to incorporate where it'll look at your most recently accessed files and will offer up suggestions for making, shortcut if you want the option. You can turn it on and off. But I think
okay, I was going to say, make sure he includes the option to disable that.
I know. Some people would hate that. I know.
No, I would like it, but probably after a while I'd be like, okay, I've created everything I want.
Yeah. For me also, I would turn it on and off.
Let me ask one question really quick.
Yeah.
Is that under active development?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
I will check it out again. I'm sure it's got some new features too then.
Yeah, he just he's been adding little stuff here and there. We will talk through. Not just me, right? Other people come up with ideas too. And he just released the beta a couple days ago, which incorporates that learning part. I think the beta one has that. His actual official launch doesn't have that yet. That's out in beta. But I've been talking about it. It's available in 11 languages, I think now. And he's ready to I think he's ready to slow down on the development of the program and work more at just trying to get more people to adopt it, because it's a pretty amazing, robust tool. I'm going to help him with an onboarding email campaign, teaching people all the different aspects of it. Because I actually told him, like, and it's kind of, I know it hurts him, but I'm like, you need a dumbed down version for people to start on, because there's so much functionality that I think it confuses people at the beginning, right? All the stuff is great he's built into it, but to get people who aren't computer nerds to start using it, it's almost overwhelming. It's kind of like ffmpeg, right? When you can barely know what you're doing and use it, but it has so much functionality, it can be confusing to people.
So let me I just found my notes that I made on quick access pop-ups. And what I wrote was that it is very cool and very powerful. But for me, I didn't discover it soon enough. So I already built up too many. I already have too many redundancies with it, with some of the other stuff I've done. But if I had found this sooner, I would have adopted it because it has everything in one place.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I still kept all my other stuff. I just, when I create whole new things, I add it there instead of manually creating the stuff by myself. But I agree. Like I didn't go transfer everything over because it's just going to be a lot of work, and my stuff works. So it just wasn't worth the effort. But yeah, when I have whole new things, I will put them under it.
So, and it's pretty lightweight. It runs in the background, and it's not a big kind of memory hog or anything, right?
I've never noticed it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'll give it another flyby and see if there's something new there, tempting enough for me to there may be some new pain point I had since last time I looked at it that'll get me going back in that direction.
Yeah, for me, it's the things that, because he's incorporated hotkeys and now hot strings you can have to trigger your things that are in it, which is nice. But it's mostly for me, it's that the things I have hundreds of hot strings and I just can't remember them all, and so I'll build a GUI to help me for the things I don't use as often. And man, when you're creating your own GUIs with submenus and AutoHotkey, that can take some time, and assigning an
Yep.
icon to the thing and everything. And so this makes it, I can add something in no time. And the other really cool thing is that it interacts with your open and closed dialogues. And that's the one actually I do like that of, I'll have folders that I access a lot. And you're probably like me, you'll have that already open in Explorer and you'll copy the path from Explorer into, like if you were opening it in Word or going to save something in PowerPoint and you want to save to that directory, right? You already have the path, so you just paste the path in, and that's kind of what he does. He just has it in memory, and it will dynamically detect you have an open or a save as dialog box available, and it will automatically grab it and navigate that open or save dialogs to that folder, which is pretty slick.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So here's a question. Here's a pain point that I have right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I use SlickRun, and it's pretty good at auto launching stuff. So it's kind of an auto launcher category of tools. And I have a lot of like hot strings or whatever defined in there, like keywords that I type and it'll do something. But there's no way to search them easily. So if I forget one, sometimes it does take me a little bit of fumbling to remember it.
Yeah.
Does quick access pop-ups have an easy way to search your current and if it's a partial match, it doesn't have to match at the beginning of the string?
I don't recall about the matching at the beginning. But are you trying to?
That would be really valuable to me.
Sure.
If it could do.
Yeah, and I know in AutoHotkey Studio, Maestricht built into it fuzzy matching, and that's something I'll ask Jean, the author of QAP, if or we can test it. Can you? I don't know if you can. Let me share my desktop and see if you can see my desktop.
Okay. I'm seeing. Yeah, I do see it now.
So this is my QAP menu, and let me go under settings. Oh, of course, it opens the other window. Search. So it does look like it's a fuzzy match, right? That's searching off the names of things there. Or maybe not. That's interesting. How come that dropped out essentials?
That might, wait, it's there at the bottom. My QAP essentials.
Yeah, but I'm adding an ESSE, and it's dropping it out. And why is it in there first? So let me.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. And what does this create? I forget what this does. So you can do searches. I'll learn a little bit more about it. But I'll ask him about making it a fuzzy search, because I agree. I don't always know exactly how it's written, or I'll spell it a little wrong. And yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, or you don't use it for a while, and yeah, right. my brain gets less. The memory gets less powerful the more I try to stick in there.
Absolutely. One thing I know you can do is, maybe it's in here, is I can. No, it's not there. Maybe it's. Oh, here we go. This, I can click here and I can see my hotkeys that I built into it and my hot strings. And so I can pull it. If they're in here, I can go see what they are.
Gotcha.
The other one that I've used, let me go to my main script, because I don't think I have it as my default hotkey for running it. So this is my main one. And somewhere in here, apps H. Yeah, so that launches Hangouts right now. But I'm going to turn on this hotkey help. Let me reload it. And now I'm going to launch it. And this one for AutoHotkey, you can have it configured to show you, like you could have it pull up and it'll show me what my hotkeys are if I've defined them well. Like this one, apps key J, I didn't put in what it does, right? But all these other ones, I've told myself what they are. And it goes across all of my currently running AutoHotkey scripts. So it looks across everything running, and you can tell it, like, actually this is different here. Sorry. I'm gonna let me move over my menu so you can see it here. And I'm gonna go to settings, and here I told it I didn't have on hot strings, right? Because unfortunately I have so many. So now when I bring it up, you can see I have a lot of hot strings. Or what? It's still, I don't think they got loaded. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, I don't think I reloaded it. I should have reloaded it. That's still too short. Let's try this again. Settings. Oh, it's there. Show hot strings. Finished. Interesting. Usually it works because I know, because I have to turn it off because it's overwhelming, because I have that, just my spell check alone has like 4,000 hot strings in it.
Wow.
So that's why I turn it off. Oh, but that's got some. Maybe you know what? Possibly I figured out a way, because these are hot strings. I must have figured out a way to tell it not to index off of that spell check, because it was driving me nuts. I mean, the list was insanely long. I don't know why that's in there multiple times. That's interesting. So anyway, it for the hotkeys alone, it's nice, because I give this to people who are new to using hotkeys, because they'll forget what they set it up as.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not valuable if it's not being used.
That's right, yeah. And that was part of why I asked Sean about incorporating to have it detect what your folders you use a lot, right, and offer them up, because again, it's like, you often, I think people don't realize how often they do the same thing over and over. What I do just here, as you can see, I lay mine out very differently. These are all shortcuts to folders that I access frequently, and so that's also why I don't put my folders in quick access pop-up, because I have them right here, and they're super handy for what I want. But to like be able to say Control Open, and let's say I'm in this window, but let's say I had built my folder I do have some folders in here, so I can say Folders. And let's say I want to go to my Excel folder. See how it recognized that window was open and then dropped me right in it. So it automatically says, hey, there's a open or a save dialog box, available. Use that one. If this wasn't here, it would have opened an Explorer window or your default, whatever you want to call that, file management tool to that folder. But I love that, because often, I have some pretty long paths that I don't want to navigate to. So it's pretty helpful. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to cover? Rick?
No, thank you for organizing this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. It was as I've told people, like, I love meeting people. First off, typically when I do like a Zoom meeting, I'm talking to people in Europe or somewhere. It's ironic that you're like 20 miles away, but I know we're both always busy, and it actually, I mean, in the same sense, like, we don't even have to be at the same place, right? You can still talk and stuff, but it is fun. Here's a quick anecdote for you. I tried starting like a meetup for AutoHotkey, right? That's how you and I actually met. And then it just was like, I couldn't get a lot of interest. So, okay, I'll still reach out to people I started talking to, but I kind of skipped it, but I found a quality assurance automation group. And because in the past I'd done things with AutoHotkey, and I saw often on people's job titles was they work in QA, right? Quality assurance or whatever it stands for. So I thought, hey, it's a quality assurance automation. I'll go to this meetup. So I go there, and people are talking about what they do, and they basically automate a lot of web development, mobile apps or browsers, and they're stress testing things and doing things like that, right? And so I said, I don't stress test things, but I automate, web pages, and I've done a little bit of the mobile stuff as well with AutoHotkey. But I then started talking about like automating other things like LinkedIn, and I have over 14,000 first level connections on LinkedIn because I've automated things in there, or automating my emails and automating this. And what was amazing was like these people looked like me, like I was crazy. Like they're like, you did what? None of them, the people there, had ever thought about like automating other things outside of what they did for work. And I just thought that was so fascinating. I'm like, but you guys do automation for a living, and yet they didn't think about using it in other ways, like, on other things that they do. So anyway, I'm going to keep going to the group, but it was interesting that like that wasn't something people had done.
They'll warm up to it eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Some people really saw the value. It just had never crossed their mind of like, what do you mean you've done this, this or that? I'm like, yeah, it's not hard. It just takes a little bit of time. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the call. Keep at it. Keep automating. Definitely, we'll have to plan another try to maybe meet up or just doing a virtual, get together. It's always fun to hear. Actually, one of the things I'm planning on doing is like having a monthly, get together like this where we talk with as many people as can about like what did you automate this last month, and just hearing people's ideas often will help you think of other ways that you can do things. And that's what I love is the sharing of ideas and concepts, and hope maybe code, but it's more the ideas of realizing like, actually you're the one. I can't wait to see your thing with the video recording of a video, because I do that a fair amount, and I could definitely say like, hey, I could just hit a button, have it grabbing I would include the audio for me, but have it record, my one designated desktop, and just know the second I hit it, it starts. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to share it. So I'll try to get that out over the weekend to you.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Awesome. All right. Thanks again. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Bye.